I don't see us yet on the screen,
It
but
says live.
all right. We're at 17 and I still don't see us on the thing yet. Is there a reason why we're not on there? Now it says live in 17 minutes. Why does that say live in 17 minutes?
I don't know.
What do I need to do? It says live.
It does say live. Okay, well, let me refresh.
See 0. Oh, there's a viewer. Is there a viewer? If you're here.
Okay. I can see you.
Oh, good.
We may just need to, I'll post
Is
that.
he our viewer?
We need to refresh their browsers.
Okay. So if everybody can just refresh your browser, just in case you logged in a little bit earlier. If you're here, if you could, over on the right-hand side, if you can tell us what school you're from or say hi so that we know that you're here. We are going to start into the official information in just a minute. Oh, we're up to 2 viewers, Leslie. It's so exciting. So if you're here, enter a little message off to the side so we know that you're here. We're so excited that you're here. I have my technical support right by me. Oh, we're only down to 1 viewer. We lost somebody. That was fast. We didn't even share anything. Oh, now we're down to 0.
Oh, no.
We've lost Oh, we're back up to 1. Okay. If you're here, share with us your name or your school name off in the chat box on the side. How come I only see Leslie? Can you see me?
I see. Oh, you've got Lisa from Bridgeport and Valeska from Pine Tree.
Yay! Pine Tree and Bridgeport in the house. Who are you seeing on the screen right now?
We see you. This is delayed. So you get going.
Awesome. All right. Well, hi, everybody. We're so excited that you're here. This is our first webinar of the year. And so we're trying to do this to get more training to you, get some training in your house so that you can be in your pajamas. I'm a business on top, but pajama bottoms on the bottom. So we are really excited that you are here. I'm here with our EVP, Leslie Powell.
Howdy.
And so we are going to be sharing a lot of information with you tonight. If you have any questions, there's a chat box on the side. So go ahead and ask your questions and we will try to answer them as we go. I am actually going to share my screen now so that we can start the slideshow. All right, let's get this thing going. All right, so welcome to the Deeper Learning Series #1, Meetings and Motions. We have several of these scheduled throughout the year, which we'll tell you about a little bit later in our presentation. So our agenda for the evening is to say a quick hello, welcome. We are so very glad that you are here. If you are not watching this live and you're watching it later, that's great because that means that you are trying to get more knowledge about PTA and meetings and the importance of having fast, friendly, and efficient meetings. So tonight we're going to go over the difference between e-board and association meetings. We're going to talk a little bit about agendas and minutes. We're going to go through making motions because this is something that I know people are scared of, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not that bad. We have some tips for smoother meetings, and then we have time at the end for questions from you. But if, as we're going through stuff, you have questions, feel free to type them in, or you can text me. I shared with you my phone number. And you can text me and I have an assistant who's monitoring that just in case something comes up and you can't share it in the chat. All right, so really quickly, your 2 presenters tonight are myself. My name is Heather Polito. I am the Santa Cruz Valley Council PTA president. I am a former teacher turned professional volunteer. And I have been serving on council ever since my daughter was in 1st grade, and she's now in 5th grade. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, and I have served in a million different PTA positions from just a chairperson for the book fair, to the secretary, to the treasurer, to the historian, to the parliamentarian, to the president. At the unit level, the council level, at the district level, I've been the parliamentarian, the historian, and at the state level, I also serve on the Education Commission. And last year I was on bylaws. This year I am the chair of the Special Committee for Arts Education. And my co-presenter will introduce herself, Miss Leslie Powell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Powell, and I am the council EVP. This is my second year of doing council. Last year I did parliamentarian. I've also been involved in the unit level probably since my daughter was in first or second grade, and she now is a senior in college. And I also have held many, many positions. And I think the most important thing to do is to ask questions to get answers, because nobody knows everything about anything. So that's the most important thing that I think that people need to keep in mind.
Awesome. So we're going to start out with the 3 different kinds of PTA meetings. So we have the executive board meetings, the association meetings, and committee meetings. So we're going to start off tonight with our executive board meetings. Executive board meetings should be attended by your elected officers. Check your bylaws for exactly what those are, but typically it's your president, your vice president, secretary, treasurer, auditor, historian, parliamentarian. Those are the officers that are considered elected, even though parliamentarian is appointed. But when we talk about elected officers, we usually lump the parliamentarian in there. Your site principals should attend your executive board meeting. They are there in an advisory role. They help to make sure that the programs and activities that you guys have in mind are in line with school policy. They can give you some advice on what's going on with the district level, if they have any procedural changes or things like that. Standing committee chair people. Now, this is where some people get a little bit confused. On the final page of your bylaws, toward the bottom, I think it's usually like number 10 in your standing rules, is listed your standing committee chair people. And standing committees are those folks who you want reports from all year long. So think 6th grade, yearbook, maybe box tops, maybe spiritware, things that you do consistently all year long that you want to make sure that you are hearing from those people. And then there are one-time chair people. So those are people who are in charge of one-time events, considering things like Harvest Festival, the Father-Daughter Dance. I'm totally drawing a blank. Spring Fling, Red Ribbon Week. Thank you. That's always Sue Solomon's favorite example is Red Ribbon Week. I can't believe I forgot that. Those people come to about 2 meetings before their event occurs and then 1 meeting after. You don't need to hear from the Harvest Festival chair in February, right? The Harvest Festival is a fall activity. So we would want them to come to our August and September and October meeting maybe, and then report out at the November meeting saying, this is what went well, this is what we'd like to change. But after that, we're really done with that chairperson. And so they can either re-up and chair another committee, or they can we can thank them for their service and they can be done. Executive board meetings need to be held every month throughout the school year, no exceptions. We need to make sure that we are continuing to do the business of the association every month. Even if you don't have an association meeting scheduled per your bylaws, it's really important that executive board meets every month to keep everything on track. So that leads me to why are executive board meetings held? They keep the business of the association moving. Like I said, there are bills to be paid in between association meetings, things that you've already approved, or basic office expenses, or things like remitting membership. Those things need to happen even if there's no association meeting scheduled that month. They also debate and discuss. This helps your association meetings not be too terribly long. If you keep your debate and discussion into your executive boards and you only have minor debate and discussion happening in association meetings, then you will find your association meetings shrink down, which everybody appreciates because nobody wants to sit in an association meeting for hours on end. You get to share fiduciary updates. Every single month, you should be seeing a treasurer's report, which shows the business that took place between the last meeting and today. We are all fiduciarily responsible for what happens with the PTA, everybody on the executive board. So we need to make sure that the money is being spent in the way that the association intended. And the last piece of business that we do is we make recommendations in the executive board to the association. They have elected you so that you can make suggestions to them of programs to have, fundraisers to have, different ways to partner with the school to spend some of the money that you have raised. So you as an executive board, all of the motions that you make in your meeting, those become recommendations to the association. And in your association meeting, they get read out as board recommendations, and then they're voted on by the association. Once they're approved by the association, you can actually take action on those things. You can sign contracts, you can hire vendors, you can do all that good stuff. So now that you've had your executive board meeting, we're going to move on to your association meeting.
So your association meetings are attended by those same elected officers that Heather talked about, and your standing committee chair people, and your site principal. Sometimes you might have a teacher representative who can attend those meetings as well, and all members of the association. So whether or not they're chairing an event or on a committee or just are a member and don't have any specific role, that's when they all attend at the association meeting. You need to check your bylaws to see what months you have scheduled your association meetings for. Some units have them monthly, some have them every other month. Some might have 5 a year. It really varies depending on what your unit has decided you want to do, but make sure you check your bylaws and know when those meetings are scheduled and hold them in those months. Why are association meetings held? First of all, things that are approved at executive board are kind of preliminarily approved. They're not officially approved until they go to association. So you have to get approval for all of those things that your executive board recommended at your association meeting. You also need to share your fiduciary updates just like at executive board. So your treasurer must give a treasurer's report at association. And again, the dates on that run from the previous association meeting to this one. And then you also will share updates on upcoming events, and also to take input from parents who are in attendance because they weren't all there at the executive board meeting and they need to have a voice. And this is where it happens at the association meeting. So when you're putting together an agenda for these meetings, we have on the screen right now a sample of an agenda, and then on the right side is kind of a script that you would follow, and whether or not you need a motion, because sometimes you do need a motion and sometimes you don't. So when you're having your association meeting, the first thing to remember is to always call it to order on time.
And just so you know, the gavel is optional.
Yes.
Use it if you want, but I've never used the gavel at any of my meetings. I feel kind of silly doing it, but it's optional.
I agree. I've never used one either. Some people are into it though. But try to start on time because you want people to know that you value their time. So you starting on time shows them that you're ready, you're ready to go, and you value them being there and giving their time. So the president would stand or not, wrap the gavel or not, but call the meeting to order. So the script for that would be, the meeting will please come to order.
And just so, Leslie, I'm sorry to hop
no, that's
in,
fine.
but
You pop.
I think it's really important that whoever is presenting at a meeting stand, because first of all, it helps the audience track who they're following, because sometimes if you're in the middle of a big NPR, it's kind of hard to figure out who's talking. And second of all, it helps people identify who's who, because you want them to be able to find you on the campus if they ever, have a question or an idea for you. So I think it's really helpful. I know it's not ever inside everyone's comfort zone, but I think it's really helpful, whether it's in an executive board meeting or an association meeting, to stand when you're giving your report.
Then you would move to the opening ceremonies, which would be the Pledge of Allegiance. That's how it would be listed on your agenda, not as the flag salute, as the Pledge of Allegiance. And it's always good to just choose somebody that's in the audience. I always like to choose a student. If there's a student present, they feel special to lead people in the Pledge of Allegiance. So then you would say, Tommy Smith will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please stand? And then you'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. The next thing that should be on the agenda is approval of minutes. At this point, your secretary would stand, and a couple different things can happen here. If you have not distributed a copy of the minutes from the previous meeting to everybody in the room, if the secretary is the only one in the room who has the minutes, then the secretary needs to stand and read the minutes aloud. Another option would be to have a committee assigned to read the minutes. So you could do a committee of 3, and those 3 people will sit and read the minutes, and they will approve them as a committee or correct them as a committee. The thing to remember here is that it's not required to have a committee of 3, nor is it required to have the secretary read them. You can do either of those things if you want, or you can distribute the minutes to everybody and give everybody a couple of minutes to read the minutes, and then you can ask if there are any corrections, and if there are none, then you would say the minutes stand approved as read or as distributed, and if there are corrections, then you would approve them as corrected.
And Leslie, I'm just going to pop in really quickly. Especially in executive board meetings, I think it's really important that you distribute copies of the minutes, because our executive board needs to be responsible for that information. So in my meetings, I pass out the minutes with the agenda, and I say, okay, everybody, when it comes to approval of minutes, okay, everybody, take a minute or 2 to look through the minutes and see if there are any corrections. I pause. Usually take a sip of water because I don't get to do that very often. And then I say, are there any corrections? So I don't love reading the minutes because I think that people lose things and they tune out at some point. Also, a committee of 3 is not a PTA requirement. So please, whoever started that rumor, stop that rumor. It is not a requirement. You can, if you want to move your meeting along quickly, or let's say it's your first meeting of the year and very few people were at your final meeting of the year, pick 3 people who actually were at that meeting and have them be the committee of 3. But it is not a requirement that you have a committee of 3. All right.
Next on the agenda would be financial reports. So here's your treasurer's report. So you do not need a motion for this. You will just say that your treasurer will present the treasurer's report. The treasurer will then present the treasurer's report. You then, as president, if you are the president, will say, you have heard the report of the treasurer. Are there any questions? If there are questions, the treasurer can answer those questions. And then when all of that's wrapped up, you simply say the report will be filed for the audit.
One more thing while we're here, on both the secretary's report and the financial reports, the chair is the one who either files them for audit or says approved as presented. That is not the job of the treasurer or the secretary. It is the job of the chair of the meeting. Usually that's your president, but if your president is unable to attend, then it either falls to your EVP or your first vice president. So please make sure that the chair is the one that is filing for audit or approving the minutes.
Yes. Another thing that could fall on your agenda, and this will happen twice a year, semi-annually, is the audit report. So you would list it as audit report. This one you do need a motion. So you would say, have the auditor or their representative give the report, and then you would say it has been moved and seconded that the audit report be adopted, making sure that you're following steps for a motion, which we will go into more detail in a little while about that. And then you'll have the presentation of bills. So bills are presented and their payment is voted upon. So you should itemize in your minutes as to the amount, who is to be paid and what the payment covers. And then the treasurer reads all of the bills, and they do need a motion. So they will move to pay those particular bills. You need a second, and then you'll vote on it from there.
Most units call this the ratification of checks, just so you know. So if somebody says, you know, we need to ratify checks 1 to 27, that's kind of the same thing. It's just more formally called the presentation of bills. So same thing.
Yep. Then you'll have the report of the executive board. So you don't read the entire minutes from the executive board, what the report of the executive board entails. It's just a summary that is read for information to the members. And any executive board recommendations are voted upon one at a time. So the secretary will move the adoption of any of the recommendations. So they don't have.
This is where I differ. So I know this is a script taken straight from CAPTA, and they say that they want the board recommendations voted on one at a time. I think it is okay to vote on them as a whole, as all of the board recommendations at once. However, if someone has a question about one of your board recommendations, like they want to talk about the Harvest Festival, or they want to ask some more questions about your spiritware t-shirts or whatever, then you pull those motions from the report, vote on the rest as a whole, and then return to those other motions as individual motions.
At my unit, what we do, we lump them together, like Heather was saying too. But in meetings where there might be a lot of board recommendations, like the very first meeting, for example, when you're releasing funds from a bunch of different line items and approving contracts and things like that, we will kind of break them into groups. So we'll present like maybe 5 at a time, so that it's a little bit easier to digest for the people who weren't part of the executive board meeting. That's the way we do it. And it helps with the questions too, and keeps everything kind of running smoothly. So the secretary would say, the executive board recommends, and I move to, and then read those board recommendations. You don't need a second, because that motion had come from a committee. So that's kind of the second already. So there is no second required for that. And then you vote on those.
And another thing you can do if you have a lot of board recommendations is if you have a PowerPoint that you're using at your meeting, you can put them up on the screen, or you can add them to your agenda if you have space on your agenda, so that it's easier for them to see what they're voting on. Because we want our association to understand what they're voting on. We don't want it to just be we're going to tell you all this is the way it is and you just need to say yes. We want them to understand and be able to ask questions if they have concerns. So those are some ways, especially if you have several board recommendations, to make it a little bit easier on your association.
Okay, and then you'll move on to your reports from your committees. So the president would call for the report of the committee, not the chairman's report. The person who is giving the report makes any necessary motions. So you would say, Teresa will present the report of the committee, of the father-daughter dance committee. And then Teresa would present her report, and you would ask, are there any questions regarding the report? And if there were any motions made, you would say you've heard the recommendations, and then you follow the steps of the motion. Hopefully, all of those things are moved at the executive board and they come to the association as a board recommendation. But sometimes, realistically, that just doesn't happen, and then you will need to have your committee chairperson make the motion from the floor. And then the next thing would be any unfinished business that you have. And then following unfinished business would be new business, and then you would adjourn. You do not need a motion to adjourn. You just simply say the meeting is adjourned, and then your meeting is over officially.
Yay!
Yay!
All right, so the last kind of meeting is a committee meeting. And we talked a lot about those when we were going through the script. Committee meetings are attended by the committee chair, who has been appointed by the executive board, members of the committee, and the president is allowed to attend every committee meeting with the exception of one. And I'm hoping that you all know what it is, but it is the nominating committee. The nominating committee is the only committee that the president may not serve on. When are the committee meetings held? Well, you hope for a few months prior to the event. Why are they held? To work out all the details for either your programs or your events. Now, a lot of schools have committees of one. And while I understand that's sometimes necessary, it's not always the best idea, because we want to get as many parents involved as possible. And we also don't want anybody to do all of this work on their own. So part of your responsibility as a committee chair is to try and find some people to join you in your committee. And to help you in that, tomorrow night at North Park, we are going to have a committee chair training starting at 6 o'clock. We actually have a mini vendor fair from 5:30 to 6, and then the chair training is from 6 to 7. So if you are a committee chair, we have a really good training to offer you tomorrow. So I hope that you will come. Just so you know, committees need to take their own minutes. They are not read at the association meeting or at the executive board meeting, but you need to have minutes of what happened within your meeting so that you can refer to them later. So every meeting, committee, association, and executive board should have their own minutes. Now, within the committee, you appoint your own secretary. So if you're a secretary on this webinar and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go to all those meetings. No, it is appointed within the committee. So the committee chair looks around at all the people sitting in their meeting and they say, you look like you want to be the secretary. And then they appoint them as the secretary. All right. Agendas and minutes.
Agendas and minutes. So agendas are created by the president or the secretary. Generally, they are created by the president, but the question has come up that can the secretary do it, because these things need to be posted, and yes, they can be. But obviously you're going to have input from the president as to what needs to go onto the agenda. Association agendas have to be posted 10 days before the meeting. That's something that a lot of units are unaware of, and it needs to be happening. So you need to prepare your association agendas at least 10 days ahead and post them somewhere. They could be posted on a bulletin board in your office. They could be posted on
your Facebook page,
on your website. Any of those places are fine, but they have to be publicly posted somewhere. And they should include the secretary report, the treasury report, the committee report. That is for the association. Your executive board agenda does not need to be posted like that. It's just the association. It's a good idea to have your executive board agenda emailed out to your executive board ahead of time, just so that they can prepare for things, but that doesn't need to be posted. Just the association does. The minutes are the official records of the association. They have to include all of the motions, all of the fiduciary updates, and any votes that are taken. Minutes have to be taken at every meeting, even committee meetings, like Heather just said. And minutes should not be posted. According to, is it our bylaws, Heather, or is it?
Well, we are a membership organization. And
Okay.
so because of that, only our members get to see our minutes. This doesn't mean that we're a secret club or anything, but you have to become a member in order to get the full thrust of information. Now, if you want to include your entire school community and kind of giving them a heads up of all the amazing things that your PTA is doing, you could publish a summary of your minutes where you say, you know, our PTA has hosted these amazing events and we have these things coming up and we just donated, you know, $5,000 to the school for Chromebooks. And you can summarize things, but you cannot publish or post your meeting minutes. So if you have a PTA bulletin board, you can put your association agenda on there, but please do not put your association minutes on there.
And then one other thing that we did want to address are recording protocols. So a lot of people will say, oh, my secretary would like to record the meeting to help him or her later when they're finishing the minutes. But that can't just happen because the secretary wants to do it. And anybody in the audience can't just record the meeting. That's just not allowed. If somebody would like to record the meeting, it has to be a motion, first of all, needs to be made to have their meeting recorded. And then every single person in the room has to be polled to say yes. If one person in the room says no, that meeting cannot be recorded. So go individually around the room, one person at a time, and say, are you okay with recording this meeting? And if everybody in the room says yes, then go ahead and that will be allowed. The thing about this is that that motion would have to be made at every single meeting. One motion at the very first meeting doesn't cover every meeting because there are different people that attend every meeting. So you would have to do that at every single meeting in order to have the meeting be recorded. And remember too that executive board in particular is supposed to be a very private meeting. So there especially, I would use caution with recording because that's where your deeper discussions happen, and some of the things that aren't public or you wouldn't want to be public, those things are discussed and decided upon in those meetings. So the recording of an executive board meeting, you really need to stop and think before you would do that, in my opinion.
And secretaries, for those of you who are out there, I know that there's at least Jenna from Helmers on she was watching earlier. So hi, Jenna. Secretaries, don't be that nervous about it. Honestly, the minutes are not designed to record everything. You are not court stenographers. Really what you need to get are the motions. And we have some tips later on to help you with getting the motions down in a way that's easier. And just the gist of what discussion happened. You don't have to say so-and-so said, and then this happened, and then that's not what our minutes are at all. It's more of a summary of the things that happened.
Right.
All right, so now we're to my favorite part because I'm a parliamentarian at heart. We're going to talk about making motions. Now, I've been traveling around to several meetings so far this year, and thank you to all of the presidents who've allowed me to come into your meetings. I always love seeing the amazing things that you guys are doing. But we do need to make motions on things for insurance purposes, for our official records. We have to have motions. And so when it's your time to make a motion, whether you're a committee chair or a standing chair, or whether you're an officer, you first obtain the floor from the chair. So you're either given the floor by the chair, oh, it's time for the treasurer's report, or you raise your hand and you request to be acknowledged by the chair of the meeting. Once you're recognized, you make the motion. Now, the correct way to say this, and we're going to practice in just a minute, is I move. Not I move to make a motion. Not I motion. Not I think we should do the following. The correct way to make a motion is to say, I move that we hold the Harvest Festival on Friday, October 10th. That's it. That's all you have to say. Then the motion needs a second, and that just is someone else in the room to say the following word, second. When you second a motion, you are not agreeing with the motion. This is really important to understand. Leslie might have said something that I absolutely, completely disagree with. She may have just made a motion that we abolish the Harvest Festival for all time because she doesn't like it. That might be her motion. But I think that there's value in us debating it and discussing it, and I want Leslie's opinion to be heard. So I will second her motion because I want us to be able to debate this. That's the reason you second. You don't second because you agree. You second because you're welcoming debate and discussion. Before any discussion happens, the chair makes sure that everybody is clear on what we are about to discuss. So they restate the motion. So we have a motion on the floor to hold the Harvest Festival on Friday, October 10th. And then debate or discussion happens. Now, to parliamentary procedure, the way that it should happen is you go back and forth, one person who's for the motion and one person who's against the motion, and you go back and forth, usually no more than 3 times. But what happens if every single person who wants to speak is in support of the motion? Well, my suggestion is close debate. If we're all like, it's great, yeah, I want to do that, that sounds amazing, oh my gosh, Harvest Festival, love it. Well, we have consensus, everybody's on board. But you need to give a moment to make sure, is there anybody who's against this idea? You might even want to ask that. Is there anybody who wants to state a position in the opposite? Because you want to make sure that everybody gets a voice. After your debate is done, debate is closed, and you put the question to a vote. So the chair will say, the motion on the floor is to hold Harvest Festival on Friday, October 10th. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. And then he or she either announces the ayes have it or the motion was defeated. Either way. Now, we're going to practice. Okay, everybody, this is your practice. We're all going to do it together. Leslie and I are going to do it too. So we're going to practice. We're going to say the correct way to make a motion 3 times. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. I move. I move. I move. Oh, you guys are so amazing. I could hear you all the way over here in Canyon Country. All right. So there are multiple ways that you can vote. And the most common one that you will find in your meetings are the voice vote, which was what we just practiced. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. If your meeting is loud or there are lots of kids and you can't tell the ayes from the noes, then you could call for a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. And then you kind of do a count. My favorite, which I always call for every time we're at PTA State Convention, is a roll call vote. The way a roll call vote works is you have to go through the room person by person by person and ask each of them what they want, which when you're in a room with 3,000 people at convention sounds like a really fun idea to me. I don't know why everybody's always telling me not to make that motion, but anyway. The other one is a ballot vote. Ballot votes always happen in elections where there is more than one person running, but ballot votes could happen at any time. So let's say you're talking about implementing a new program on your campus, whether that's a new fundraiser or it's a new event. So somebody wants to have sports day and you've never had a sports day before and your board seems really divided about it. Some people are really excited and some people really aren't excited. Because it's different and new and that scares us. So if you as the president feel that this is kind of a divisive thing or you want to make sure that everybody gets to vote honestly how they feel, you can call for a ballot vote at any time. Secretaries, you should always have ballots with you because you're responsible for having ballots. Really all ballots are little pieces of paper. They can be scratch pieces of paper. They could be 3x5 cards or Post-it notes, but something where people can write down yes or no on. Anybody in the room can actually call for a ballot vote at any time. So secretaries, please be prepared for that. And the last one is general consent. So earlier I was giving the example, if you're debating something and absolutely everybody's like, yes, yes, this is amazing, this is great. Because you have the feeling as the chair that every single person in the room agrees, you don't even have to do a voice vote. You can just say, by general consent, the motion is carried or the motion is adopted, depending on where you are. So there are many, many different voting methods available to you. So I hope that you will try them out because each of them are very interesting. And if you're going to do a roll call, let me know because I want to come help. All right, so a couple more things on voting. Voting by proxy is prohibited. So if you had somebody who wanted to call into your meeting and, weigh in on something, that is not allowed. They actually physically have to be in the room. If I'm a member, but my husband is not, I cannot send my husband in to vote on my behalf. That is not allowed. It's one member, one vote. So if he's not a member, I can't give him my vote. Any action that you take that are in violation of your bylaws or California corporate code are null and void. So if you decide to, your bylaws say that your dues are $5 and you vote to make them 50, that is in violation of your bylaws. And so that would be null and void. So just make sure that you're consulting your bylaws as you go. And this is really important, especially if there's something in your association meeting that could be contentious or thought-provoking. Non-members, people who have not been a PTA member for 30 days may not make motions, they may not debate, and they may not vote. This is especially important in elections. If they have not been a member for 30 days, then they can't run, they can't have any kind of debate and they can't vote. So make sure that your membership chair is keeping a current list and bringing it with them to association meetings just in case that comes up.
So now we're going to move on to some tips for smoother meetings. The first tip that we have for you is to use motion forms. If you've never seen a motion form, we have included one here on our slide. This is an example of one. It does not have to look like this, but this is a pretty simple one, and I think a really useful one. So whoever your motion maker is would take one of these motion slips and fill out, moved by Leslie Powell, meeting date, September 13th, 2017, and whether or not it's association or executive board. If you're opening a budget, you would fill out that section where it says to open a budget. I moved release funds in an amount not to exceed $200 for Red Ribbon Week. You're just writing it out. This will also help people say their motions correctly. It helps ease some of the nerves that people have. If you're not opening a budget, you would fill in that bottom section. For all other motions, it says, and the person would just write, I move to use the whatever DJ for the father-daughter dance. You fill it out, you read it as you wrote it, and then you hand that slip straight to your secretary so that the secretary has a written record from the motion maker that they can then write directly into the minutes. It helps your secretary and it helps the motion maker, and it can also help your president restate the motion. So it's good if the president and the secretary are sitting near each other. Motion forms are kept by the secretary. These motion forms, though, really, really help people stay on track and help to make sure that they're getting everything that they need into their motion. A really great idea is to have these available way before the meeting at any time. Just leave them in your PTA office or distribute some to your executive board and chair people so that they can fill them out ahead of time. And if they have a question about how they're forming their motion, they can ask the parliamentarian or the president or anybody who's maybe a veteran of PTA to help them word it correctly. But having it written on these motion forms will make your motions so much smoother for everyone.
And I have several different examples of motion forms. If anybody would like them, feel free to email me. I would like to thank, again, Castaic for letting me steal their motion form because it's my favorite one I've ever seen. So I use it every time I train. So well done, Castaic. Good job.
We also have available for you a parliamentary motion chart. This kind of tells you if you're making a main motion, you say this, and it tells you if it can interrupt a meeting. Do you need it to have a second? Is it debatable? It's basically a chart to help you know what direction to move with a particular motion. We have copies of this. Heather, you have copies of that, right? Or is there a copy?
Of course I have copies for this, but you can also find it on.
Is it in the toolkit?
It is in CAPTA.org. Yeah, all you search for is parliamentary motion chart. I always, as the president, have this in my procedure book, and I sometimes pull it out and put it between myself and my parliamentarian so that we both are kind of keeping an eye on it as the meeting goes on. I actually laminated mine because I'm weird like that.
So that's a really handy thing to have. And another favorite of mine, and just so you know, I've been president twice now. The first time I was president, I did not use timed agendas. The second time I was president, I did. And I would never, ever go back to not using a timed agenda. If you put times on your agenda, it will help everybody in the room stay on task. Figure out ahead of time how long you would like to give for each item, and actually physically write down what time you are anticipating each agenda item to start. Start on time, it will help you end on time. And actually in my unit, what we have found is that we usually are ahead of our timed agenda. Where before we used a timed agenda, meetings could sometimes run long. It's easy for things to get away from you, discussion to go long. But if you have a timed agenda and your parliamentarian is keeping time in the event of a hotly debated issue, they can look right at you and say, our time is up for this topic. It's time to move on. And that helps everybody because everybody has it right there in front of them. Everybody knows we're only going to spend 10 minutes on this particular topic. That's it. And the people who attend your association meetings, especially, like I said earlier, they want to know that you value their time. Don't waste 2.5 hours of their time when this could be done in an hour easily. So having times on your agenda, in my opinion, makes everything run so much smoother.
All right, so another way to help your meetings run better is to use parliamentary procedures. Parliamentary procedure has 5 different thoughts behind it. Number 1, it gives you order. As you saw with the motion chart, things happen in a very specific way, in a very specific order. It promotes equal opportunity. So we want all of our parents, whether they agree with what we're saying or they don't, we want them to feel like they have a chance to say what they need to say. And we want it to be fair, right? We don't want anything to be too one-sided. So parliamentary procedure allows the right of the minority to be heard, but the right of the majority to decide. We all know those squeaky wheels who might oppose every single thing that we come up with. But if they're not on the majority, we still want to hear what they have to say, but then the majority makes the decision and we move on from there. Now, the beautiful thing about parliamentary procedure is that this isn't personal. This isn't me versus Leslie. This is Leslie came up with a motion and I don't agree with it. So I'm disagreeing with her motion. I'm not disagreeing with her. I'm disagreeing with her motion. And I've said my piece. I've debated how I don't agree with it. I voted against it, but the majority voted for it. And so now I need to let that go. I need to move on for the good of my school and the kids at my school. So we can respectfully disagree about a motion or something that happens in a meeting, but it stays within the meeting and it doesn't go outside. This is not personal. Try not to make it personal. Try your best to put on a different hat. Leslie and I are not friends right now. Leslie and I are PTA officers right now. And it's not me telling my friend I don't like her idea. It's me telling the membership chair that I don't like her idea. All right. And this one is especially important for every single member of the executive board, whether you're a committee member or the president. You need to come prepared. If you are giving a report, please be ready to stand up and give that report. Don't be searching through your bag for your notes or scrolling through your phone trying to find something. You need to be ready when you are called on to deliver whatever it is. Presidents, same thing with you. You need to make sure your agenda is intact. You need to make sure that you've told everybody that they're going to present at this meeting. You don't want to get up there and not look like you don't know what you're doing. So you need to come to your meetings ready to go and prepared. And I know sometimes that's hard because we're all busy and we've got a lot of other stuff going on, but really you need to make sure that when you hit that door for that meeting, you are ready to go. So be prepared, not scared. All right, so we've kind of been monitoring questions as we go. My sweet husband has been kind of typing things as we go. Are there any questions that you have about things we've mentioned today? Anything you'd like for us to cover in the future that we didn't? One of the things that Leslie and I were talking about was recording a sample meeting. Would that be helpful to you to see what a sample meeting kind of looks like with the verbiage and the motion talk? If it is something that you think would be valuable, just chime in the comments, or you can text me or email me. Just so you know, we have the next 2 Deeper Learning series scheduled. On October 11th, we're going to be doing a finance Deeper Learning series with the council treasurer and the council auditor. And then on November 9th, our parliamentarians actually asked us to do a nominating committee, elections, and recruiting piece. So Sue Solomon and I will be doing that on November 9th. So I'm still looking to see if there are any questions. I'm so excited that you guys are all here. I see that there are several people watching. I if you're watching on your phone, it doesn't give us a heads up that you're online, but I know that there are at least several people watching on their computer. So, all right. Is there anything else?
Not from my end.
Oh, Jenna, you're so sweet. Thank you very much. All right. Leslie, I think we need to do it one last time. I move. All right, everybody. So I want to thank you so much for, let's see if I can stop screen sharing. Oh, hi, there I am. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope that you found this valuable. Like I said, we have a couple more scheduled. If you have any questions at any time, you can reach out to Leslie. She's our EVP. You can reach out to me. We would love to answer your questions. We can share answers on our Facebook page too with you. Thank you for giving up your time tonight, and thank you for all you do for the kids of Santa Clarita. All right, everybody. And we even finished early. Look at that. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, everybody, have a really great night, and we will see you at our next Deeper Learning series on October 11th on finance. Thanks so much.
Bye.